spaced out, and we're going to do the same thing. All right? Right. And I want you guys to know, I haven't told you, this is, next semester is my last semester.
And then you what?
Tired?
Oh, you in your right mind? Because it's hard to be tired in your right mind.
Yeah.
Almost.
Almost, but I'm going to stay until I'm Brother James Conyers, Director of Africana Studies here at Kane University. It is my pleasure to welcome you to our annual Pre-Kwanzaa Celebration. Before we begin, in order to stay in good standing with our ancestors and with tradition, we must pour a libation. We pour a libation to honor African gods and goddesses. Ashe. We pour a libation to honor African ancestors. Ashe. We pour a libation to honor African elders upon whose shoulders we stand. Ashe. We pour a libation to honor all those Africans who shed their blood in our struggles. Ashe. We pour a libation to honor ourselves to keep us strong for the struggles ahead. Ashe. 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 Once again, greetings and welcome to our annual celebration. Kwanzaa. Kwanzaa is a celebration of what it means to be African. During Kwanzaa, we revel in being African, unapologetically, without compromise or negotiation. During Kwanzaa, we reassess, we reevaluate, we look at what our lives have been and where our lives are going. We commune with one another, we share with one another, we work with one another, we dedicate ourselves to the principles of Kwanzaa, the Nguzo Saba, and we try to live by those principles, not just during the week of Kwanzaa, but throughout our daily lives. In the words of our esteemed, honored ancestor, Nana John Henry Clark, Africa is our center of gravity. Africa is our spiritual and cultural mother and father. It is our beating heart. It is our center. So with that being said, we're going to begin our program because our program will be somewhat limited today. But we're going to begin our program by welcoming to the stage the Office of Africana Studies, Kwanzaa poets, Malcolm Morera and Essie McNeil.
Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Malcolm Herrera, and here's my poem, Knock Knock by Daniel Beatty. As a boy, I shared the game with my father, played it every day till I was 3. He would knock knock on my door and I would pretend to be asleep until he got right next to me, and then I would get up and jump in his arms. Good morning, Papa. And my papa would tell me that he loved me. We shared the game, knock knock, until the day that when the knock never came and my mother took me on a road, cornfield, on this plain, never-ending highway, till I reached a place of high, rusty gates. A confused little boy, I entered the building, carried in my mom's arms. Knock, knock. We reached a room of windows and brown faces behind those windows. And there sit my father. I jumped out of my mother's arms and ran joyfully towards my father, only to be confronted by this window. I knock, knock, trying to break through the glass, trying to get to my father. I knock, knock, as my mother pulled me away before my papa even said a word. And for years, he never said a word. And 25 years later, I write these words for a little boy in me who still waits his papa's knock. Papa, come home, 'cause I miss you. I miss you waking me up in the morning and telling me that you love me. Papa, come home, 'cause there's things I don't even know. I thought maybe you could teach me how to shave, how to dribble, how to talk to a lady, how to walk like a man. Papa, come home, because I decided a while back I want to be just like you, but I forget who you really are. And 25 years later, a little boy cries, and so I write these words and try to heal myself and try to father myself. And I dreamed up a father who would say these words that my father did not. Dear son, I'm sorry I never came home for every lesson I failed to teach you. Hear these words. Shave in one direction in strong, deliberate strokes to avoid irritation. Dribble the page with the brilliance of your ball-put pen. Walk like a god, and your goddess will come to you. No longer will I be there to knock on your door, so you must learn to knock for yourself. Knock, knock down doors of racism and poverty that cannot. Knock, knock doors of opportunity for the loss of the brilliance of these black men who crawl these cells. Knock, knock, for as long as you are free, these present gates cannot contain my spirit. The best of me still lives in you. Knock, knock, with the knowledge that you are my son, but you are not my choices. Yes, we are our fathers and sons and daughters, but we are not their choices. But despite their absences, we are still here, still alive, still breathing, with the power to change this world, one little boy and girl at a time. Knock, knock, who's there? We are.
Fruit is what the name Kwanzaa means. It's celebrated everywhere by kings and queens. Based on several principles that still exist, if you check out this rhyme, you'll get the gist. Ujamaa, a Swahili name for unity, is the goal we strive for across this country. Kujirakulia means self-determination. We define ourselves a strong creation. Ujima, or collective work and responsibility, is how we build and maintain our own community. For if my people have a problem, then so do I. So let's work through it together with our heads held high. Ujamaa, meaning cooperative economics, is nothing new. We support and run our own stores and other businesses too. Nia is purpose, us developing our potential as we build our community strong to the exponential. Kumba is the creative force which lies within our call as we leave our communities better for all. As a people, let's move forward by extending our hands. For Imani is faith, to believe that we can. These 7 principles to help make our nation strong. If we live by these ideals, you can't go wrong. But you must first determine your own mentality and believe in yourself as you want to be. And no matter how far, work hard to reach your goals as we stand as a people, heads up, fearless and bold.
Thank you, Malcolm and Nessie. Please forgive us for some of the technical difficulties that we may be having. It's just unavoidable. And we're going to be moving with the speed of light, so please stay with us because we only have an hour for this program today. It's not our normal Kwanzaa celebration where we spend several hours with the community. We feast, we karamu with the community. So we're going to be moving pretty quickly. At this point in time, I'm going to introduce our guest speaker who has some words of wisdom for us. He's my brother. He's my classmate. He's my colleague. Brother Ron Stevens will be speaking on Idlewild, Michigan, a hidden gem for African Americans. Please welcome Brother Ron Stevens.
Let me begin by giving a special thanks to my brother and colleague, James Conyers, who serves as the Director of Africana Studies,
Yeah.
and especially to Lisa, the administrative assistant who has been so patient in organizing this pre-Kwanzaa celebration and arranging my presentation. So without going into any details regarding the 7 principles, I would like to hit head on with the theme of my talk. Speaking from an Afrocentric perspective, it is my objective to offer a creative, unified, collective perspective as we reflect on this celebration of the first fruit of harvest. As such, it is not my intent to promote the commercialization of this celebration or to sell any material goods, i.e. any greeting cards, blankets, pillows, or board games. Rather, I want to talk about land use and development as we internalize meanings of unity, self-determination, collective work, cooperative economics, purpose, creativity, and faith. So my presentation focuses on the meaning and power of place that embodies what it means to be a person of African descent during Jim Crow segregation in the United States today and our future possibilities. These cultural experiences reinforce a persistent narrative in the leisure, entertainment, and recreational life experiences of African Americans throughout various communities and time periods. These are leaders who carved out their own constructions of citizenship and place. And I'm particularly talking about in Western Michigan, but I should point out that there were other places like Idlewild throughout the United States. So take, for example, in New Jersey, in Atlantic City, on Kentucky Avenue, and on the boardwalk with Chicken Bone Beach, or in New York and Sag Harbor, you name it, there are other places. So understanding this history and the outdoor restrictions placed upon middle and upper class African Americans and their responses to racial discrimination illustrates how their activism, ability to mobilize and resist the social forces against them only intensified and gave reasons for the following of Black separate spaces in small towns, big cities, and resort and beachfront communities. To this day, in many of these separate spaces, like Idlewild, they reveal, a set of amazing stories about a resilient and unified people who struggled and achieved some measure of economic success and self-determination. So since Kwanzaa Since Kwanzaa represents a time to build upon and reconnect on family and community values, and as a focal point for a gathering of African people, I want to illustrate how the 7 principles of Kwanzaa can be linked to the existence of places like Idlewild to sustain Black mobility, consumerism, economic development, and etc. Now, to put it very simple, is what I mean is these are spaces that we carved out ourselves. These are spaces that, despite what was going on in the country then, and in particular, it's focusing on what is happening now. These are places where we built our own economy, we supported each other, we worked together, etc. So let me tell you a little bit about Idlewild. Racial and demographic factors were important to its cultural, economic, and social history and development. Now, ironically, it was founded in 1912 by 4 white land developers and their wives from Chicago and White Cloud, Michigan, who did so by establishing the Idlewild Resort Company. But by 1915, they had extended an invitation to a small yet distinguishable group of Black middle-class professionals and entrepreneurs to invest in the resort before turning it over to Dr. Daniel Hale Williams. So as you look at the slides, understand that Dr. Daniel Hale Williams was a key player in the early development and foundational years of Idlewild. He was the first surgeon in U.S. history to successfully perform open heart surgery, and he and his colleagues, he was the president of the Idlewild Improvement Association, and they built one of the first sections in Idlewild which we now call Williams Island. At that time, it was called the island. Now, Dr. Dan, Madam C.J. Walker, Dr. W.E.B. Du Bois, who was editor of the Crises magazine, visited Idlewild, published an article in Crises in 1921, and talked about how marvelous a place it was. Now, I'm not trying to suggest that the people, these early black professionals and entrepreneurs and scholars had Kwanzaa in mind. But if we think about the principles behind how they built Idlewild and how it has sustained for over 100 years, I would say that they were kind of perhaps unconsciously following the principles of Kwanzaa. So by the 1920s and 30s, Idlewild was known as the Black Eden of Michigan, and it specifically was targeted to market African-American communities as we were living in Jim Crow segregation. The new Negro movement of that time set the mood for progressive racial uplift and middle-class upward mobility for Black leaders, such as the people that I just mentioned, who wanted to create a utopian spaces. These Black leaders embraced and claimed ownership of approximately 1,300 acres and 500 structures in section 5, 6, 7, and 8 of Yates Township in Lake County, which is where Idlewild is located. Now, Idlewild has 5 lakes, the cleanest lakes in the poorest county in the state of Michigan, and in that county there's 150 lakes, but Idlewild has the cleanest. So in the 1930s and 20s and into somewhat the 40s, Chicago leaders dominated the scene in Idlewild. But by the 1950s and 60s, in the midst of the civil rights movement and the Black Power movement, there were Detroiters who did this. And these Detroiters, it was a new day, it was a new time. This was after the Second World War. Troops had come home, African-American troops had returned from the war, and they wanted to celebrate themselves. And they found places like Idlewild and others as the hallmark to do that. At this time, like the Apollo in New York City, in Harlem, Idlewild was the summer Apollo of Michigan. It targeted a whole new clientele. As you know, the class structure in Black America had changed. That old middle class was still in existence, but it was moving around in the country. And there was a new middle class emerging who consisted of factory workers, taxi drivers, and even numbered men and women. And they helped to build a new Idlewild. It was a showcase of entertainment. Some of the most popular artists of the day appeared in Idlewild on a regular basis. I'm talking about people like the Four Tops, Della Reese, Jackie Wilson, and I can go on and on and on. And on any weekend during the summer months from after May until the fall, after Labor Day weekend, you could see first-class entertainment in Idlewild. Now, I should note, too, at this same time, there were 3 hotels in Idlewild, about 50 motels, and at that time, people who owned homes away from homes, they owned cottages. They made available about 75 of their cottages. There were 3 gas stations. It was a mecca. It was a lot of money that was constantly circulating within the African-American community, and a lot of people were supported. It was a collective effort. It was a self-determination effort. People had a purpose. They were very creative. There were barbershops, beauty salons, you name it, Idlewild had it. So it's ironic that during Jim Crow, Idlewild thrived. But then after the civil rights movement, there was a change. There was a shift in class and racial dynamics in Idlewild. And so consequently, Idlewild suffered because of the civil rights, the passing of the Civil Rights Act of 64 and the Voting Rights Act of 1965. So for the last 50 to 70 years, the people in Idlewild who had gone through a period of socioeconomic decline. And of course, Idlewild was not the only African-American resort community or space that had encountered this. So we had the same thing in Florida with American Beach, the same thing in Maryland with Highland Beach. One of the only resorts that was not hit as hard was on Martha's Vineyard with Oaks Bluff. And that's because of class issues. But most communities, resort and beachfront communities, suffered miserably. And in our big cities, there were changes that were happening. And so over the last 70 years or so, there has been a resurgence and an interest in Idlewild. And a number of people have reinvested, purchased property, they're building new homes, and they're trying to sustain that same kind of vision of a utopian space. My point in all of this is that as we reflect on the meaning of the 7 principles of Kwanzaa, it's important to take it to the next level, to actualize our reflections. It's important that we support our Black businesses and Black spaces, land spaces that are ours, and not to give them up, particularly during these tiring times of a global pandemic, systematic racism, a need to rebuild Black America, a need to a recognition of the social and racial forces that are against us. So in essence, what I mean by Idlewild being a hidden gene is that it's a property ownership, that it's a space, a place that we own, that we should reclaim. And some of us are claiming it. But Idlewild is not the only space. There are other spaces. And so my Kwanzaa message, my pre-Kwanzaa message to you, my brothers and sisters, is that we should consider about investing in spaces that are close in proxemics to where we live, or in places like Idlewild before they disappear. So, and thank you.
Thank you, Brother Ron Stevens. I hope that was enlightening for everybody who was listening. Yeah. Thank you, Brother Ron Stevens. It was my pleasure once again to be with you and to hear you speak, and a little bit about your research and the things that we are doing that will help to enlighten us as African people. I think it's very, very important for all African people to spend as much time as we can studying our history, our past, as well as our present, to understand how to interpret the reality of African people in the world today. I maintain that most African people know very, very little about the African past. And as I pointed out earlier, in terms of what Dr. John Henry Clark said, Africa is our center of gravity. It is our center of gravity wherever you find us on the face of the earth. And it should be embraced, it should be taught to our children, and we will move on from there. At this particular point in time, we are going to once again welcome the Office of Africana Studies, Kwanzaa Poets.
Nadine James, and I'm going to do a short portion of the poem that I wrote for Maya Angelou tribute, so you will hear some of her words. I put some of our words together. I challenge us to come together and meet as a family from which we came, because we're harder to defeat if our morals, goals, and traditions as a people are all the same. There is strength in numbers, and too many have been sold with the idea that we're not united as a people. But truth be told, my sisters, my queens, let me tell you this. I'm not surprised that our existence upsets them. Our unapologetically melanated skin, the strength of our thighs, the reach of our arms, the span of our hips, the stride of our step, and the curl of our lips. We are the definition of women, a cosmic bliss. For those that never understood and now you understand why our heads are not bowed and why we may talk a little loud, when you see us passing, it should make you proud. our passion that seeps through our pores, because like true lioness that wars, we are survivors in this jungle and queens of our pride, both family and within the true ride or die. So now I wanna talk to my brothers, my kings, my warriors, amongst other things. You are the strength of our nation, and we recognize you as such. Up from the past that roots in pain, until you know someone's experience of the world, you will never understand their existence deeply rooted in their veins. When your back's against the wall and nothing makes sense, remember the ones before you and embrace their presence, for their memories will give you strength and hope through your life. I said it before, and I will say it again. You are a king in your birthright. Some would like for you to believe that what I'm saying is not true. Our people are suffering. So now it's up to all of you to teach those that are not aware of their history of their own, because nobody can make it out here alone. Hands up, don't shoot, Black Lives Matter, but of course they do. We are descendants of kings and queens, but instead the media portrays us as thugs and thieves, but we know the truth. Let us pull the ones that don't know up by their boots, for we are responsible for who we are. We are responsible for lifting up each other into the light, so much so that we need blue blockers to have hindsight. There are many that didn't make it here today, and may their souls rest in peace. It's up to us to reactivate our power, and let me assure you, it's not very far to seek. So sleep now, George. Sleep now, Brianna, and all the ones before you. Your lives have not been taken in vain. So please watch over us as we continue to fight in your name. Ashe, Ashe, Ashe.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Licia Akins. I work for the Office of Africana Studies, and we just want to welcome you. Thank you for joining us. My poetry today is entitled Point B by Miss Sarah K. If I should have a daughter instead of mom, she's going to call me Point B, because that way she knows that no matter what happens, at least she can always find her way home to me. And I'm going to paint solar systems on the backs of her hands, so she has to learn the entire universe before she can say, oh, I know that like the back of my hand. And she's going to learn that this life will hit you hard in the face. Wait for you to get back up just so it can kick you in the stomach. But getting the wind knocked out of you is the only way to remind your lungs how much they like the taste of air. There is hurt here that cannot be fixed by Band-Aids or poetry. So the first time she realizes that Wonder Woman isn't coming, I'll make sure she knows she doesn't have to wear the cape all by herself. Because no matter how wide you stretch your fingers, your hands will always be too small to catch all the pain you want to heal. Believe me, I have tried. And baby, I tell you, don't keep your nose up in the air like that. I know that trick. I've done it 1,000,000 times. You're just going to smell for smoke. You're just smelling for smoke so you can follow the trail back to a burning house so you can find the boy who lost everything in the fire to see if you can save him. Or else find the boy who lit the fire in the first place to see if you can change him. But I know she will anyway. So instead, I'll always keep an extra supply of chocolate and rain boots nearby, because there is no heartbreak that chocolate can't fix. Okay, there's a few heartbreaks and that chocolate can't fix it. But that's what the rain boots are for, because rain will wash away everything if you let it. I want her to look at the world through the underside of a glass-bottom boat, to look through a microscope at the galaxies that exist on the pinpoint of a human mind, because that's the way my mom taught me. That there be days like this, that there will be days like this, my mama said, when you open your hands to catch and wind up with only blisters and bruises. When you step out of the phone booth and try to fly, and the very people you want to save are the ones standing on your cape. when your boots will feel the rain and you'll be up to your knees in disappointment. And those are the very days you have all the more reason to say thank you. Because there's nothing more beautiful than the way the ocean refuses to stop kissing the shoreline, no matter how many times it's swept away. You will put the win and win some, lose some. You will put the star in starting over and over. And no matter how many landmines erupt in a minute, be sure your mind lands on the beauty of this funny place called life. And yes, on a scale from 1 to over-trusting, I'm pretty damn naive. But I want her to know that this world is made out of sugar. It can crumble so easily, but don't be afraid to stick your tongue out and taste it. Baby, I'll tell her, remember, your mama is a worrier, and your papa is a warrior. And you are the girl with the small hands and big eyes who never stops asking for more. Remember that good things come in threes, and so do bad things. And always apologize when you're done something wrong, but don't ever apologize for the way your eyes refuse to stop shining. Your voice is small, but don't ever stop singing. And when they finally hand you heartache, when they slip war and hatred under your door and offer you handouts on street corners of cynicism and defeat, you will tell them that they really ought to meet your mother. Thank you.
Thank you, Kwanzaa poets, Nadine James and Licia Akins. Before I invite our next guest performer, one piece of poetry to remind us where we've been, where we are, and where we're going comes from the pen of Oscar Brown Jr. It's called Bitter Men. Bitter men, get 'em in, bitter men. That sun is hot and plenty bright. Let's get down to business and get home tonight. Bid 'em in, get 'em in. Auctioning slaves is a real high art. Bring that young gal, Roy, she's good for a start. Now here's a goodbye, about 15. Great-grandmammy was a Dahomey queen. Just look in her face, she sure ain't homely. Like Sheba in the Bible, she's black but comey. She's full up front and ample behind. Examine her teeth if you got a mind. She's good in the fields, can sew and cook. Strip her down, Roy, let the gentleman look. I hear bid of 3 from a man who's thrifty, 325, can I hear 350? Your money ain't earning you much in the banks. Turn around, Roy, let 'em look at her flanks. Turn around, Roy, let 'em look at her flanks. 350's bid, can I hear 4? $400, she's a bargain sure. 425, 450, $500. Now look alive, bid 'em in, get 'em in. Don't mind them tears, that's one of her tricks. 550 bid, who'll say 6? She's young and healthy and well equipped. Make a fine lady's maid when she's properly whipped. 650, don't be slow. 7 is the bid, gonna let her go. At 7, she's going, gone. Pull her down, Roy, bring the next one on. Bid 'em in, get 'em in, bid 'em in. Hope that will remind everybody where we've been so that we never forget what the history of this country has been about. Our next guest performer is a part of the Africana Studies family here at King University and has been a part of the family at King University for many, many years. I think it's been now at least 20 years, if not more, that they've been with us. So without further ado, because time is limited, let me invite to the stage and welcome Sister Zul and Spectrum's Africans.
Peace and blessings, everyone. It's good to always be here in the presence of status, hierarchy, kings, queens, and the symbolism that has a journey for us, and we're on a path, different stages, but it's our journey. The dance is the medicine. The dance is the healing. The dance is the spirit and the soul of not just our nation, but all nations. When you find dance, it finds your spirit and soul and lifts you. We have gone through a lot of toil and trouble. We have gone through the many axes and slaves and slings. They've gone through us too. But at the end of the day, we still have our sanity. And it's based on the culture through the arts. It's based on the singing through the dance. The music is healing, from grandmama rubbing her knees to old Uncle Paul getting up doing the huckabuck. The circle dance continues. Let us not forget those that we come through. Let us understand that we're on the shoulders and the backs and not the necks. Let us understand that when you can't sing, you can hum. And when you can't hum, you can rock. Please, we're going to do 3 small renditions of several dances from the West African diaspora. And one name will be Lamban. It's done for passages. Another dance will be Sunu, and it serves as a harvest also to thank the Most High for giving us those gifts. There's dances for all occasions, whether it's birth, death, marriage, puberty, right? Even things dealing with the mind, insanity. There was no prescription to go to the pharmacy. You went and took it to the drum. So we have to remember. We have to remember and never relinquish the energy and the time and the spirit that goes on. The spirit in the water, the spirit in the soil, the spirit in the flesh. All these things come before we do. So if we keep these things in our mind and in our hearts, we'll never diminish. Okay, can we have a little lamban? going to end with a power dance, usually brothers, but because we're virtual now, there is a brother that will maybe come up and do a step or two with me. It's called Dudumba. Usually the mothers teach the sons, and then the sons grow to teach other brothers, okay, who then become fathers, who teach their sons. But the distance of the water, the distance of the mindset, it has gotten unscrambled. Things that happened on the continent got changed around a bit when it got here. Okay, so the history of certain things didn't change, but some of the steps from the different ethnic groups, okay, changed. It's coming from West Africa. They do it in Senegal, Guinea, and Mali. There's other dances that look similar, done by other groups, but the names vary. So we're going to do a dance called Dudumba. It's a warrior dance, and you'll see the warrior men, the wrestlers in Dakar, coming out to this music, okay, with their drum ensembles and the people who sing to encourage them, and all kind of regalia on their body, juju, things to psych their mind up because they want to win this fight. So you'll see some movements of fighting in this particular dance. Okay, thank you. young man, for coming up, showing that you had no fear, no intimidation there, and you're willing to learn. That's how it starts. That's not how it ends. Bring somebody. Take somebody. Culture somebody. Introduce them to your dance. If you don't claim it, other people do. And it's on YouTube and you can see it. It ain't you. Peace and blessings. Habari Gani. And let this not be the first, and let it be the last virtual. We need to shape up and get this thing right. Peace and blessings.
Okay. Madasi, Sister Zul, thank you so much for once again being here when we call upon you. Sister Zul is going to introduce the drummers.
Yes. Two of the household. We have on the bottom, we call them the bottom drums, Kinara, one of the baby boys, can you believe it? His name is Kinara, as in the principles for Kwanzaa, name so he can hold up the family, the culture, the state of what we're in. That's his job, his function. He has to keep it going, so he is the Kinara, the living Kinara. And then we have, he plays the bottoms, those are usually the bass drums. And Kazuri, okay, he plays the lead djembe, okay? And not only does it talk to you, it manifestates you. So don't let anyone give you a second thought about anything heathen or pagan. We can talk without talking. We can drum without having a drum. The heartbeat is the drum. So they were raised up and reared up on just knowing that. They can't drop the baton. They don't have an option. Peace and blessings.
Madasi, once again, Sister Zul, yebo for the performance. We are now moving into concluding and winding down our abbreviated Kwanzaa celebration. But before we do that, I'd like to explain for those who are new to Kwanzaa some of the things that we see here on the Kwanzaa table. First and foremost, we have a mat. The mat is called an mkeka, which represents a foundation. All people must have a foundation, and we as African people certainly have Africa as our foundation. So it's called an mkeka. Next, we have a basket with fruit in it. The fruit is called mazal, which represents our collective work and labor to produce a harvest. Now, harvest celebrations can be found historically throughout Africa, everywhere in Africa, where the people come together and harvest the fruits and vegetables and celebrate their collective work and labor to harvest the crops. The corn here represents muhindi, which represents our children. Our children are our future, so we have to cultivate them very, very carefully, which means you have to be careful with the language you use around them. You have to be careful in terms of what you say to them. You have to educate it to understand who they are. It's very, very important. Next, we have a kinara. The kinara is the candle holder, and it represents our roots. It represents our traditional continental African people from whom we are descended. So it's called a kinara. Next, we have a kikombe cha umoja. This is a specially built one for me. Kikombe cha umoja means unity cup, and unity is probably the most basic thing any people can have in terms of their advancement. And finally, we have the Mashuma Saba, all right, the 7 candles, representing the Nguzo Saba, the 7 principles. I'm going to ask Ms. Licia Akins to come up and Malcolm to come up, and they're going to assist me. And they're going to stand here. I'm going to stand back a little. Let them stand here. So, we begin lighting the candles with the black candle in the center, which is umoja. Umoja stands for unity, which is the primary thing that any group of people must have in order for them to advance and to benefit one another. Umoja. Umoja. Next, we have Kujichagulia, self-determination. Self-determination. To name ourselves, to define ourselves, and speak for ourselves rather than being named and defined by others. Kujichagulia is very, very important. And we in the Office of African Studies reject any type of terminology that defames African people. That includes the N-word, whether it ends in A or ER. We consider that word an anti-African statement. One second. All right, we're having a little bit of problem with the candle, but not with the principle. Next principle, Ujima, collective work and responsibility. In our community, we work together, we share the responsibility together for the building of our community, for everything that we do in the community, and we operate as an African people. Next, Ujamaa, cooperative economics. Cooperative economics. We work together, we share in the economic productivity of our community, we shop in our own stores, we buy from one another, and we progress economically as a complete unit. Nia, purpose. We want our purpose to be the collective development of African people wherever we are found on the face of the planet. So that we're going to work together as a people to advance ourselves as a people, whether here at Kane University or whether in Dakar or whether in France, wherever we may be, we're working together for our mutual benefit. Kuumba. Well, we're having problems with the candle, but not with the principle. Kuumba, creativity. And I don't think I need to say anything about how creative black folks are. But we need to be even more creative to leave our community even better than when we found it. And Imani. Faith, to have faith in ourselves, in our leaders, and in the righteousness of our struggle. So those are the Nguzo Saba, the basic principles of Kwanzaa that we attempt to live by, not just during the 7 days of Kwanzaa, but every day of our lives. It is important, and we consider it to be the minimum set of requirements that any African person can live by. So to conclude our ceremony, first, I'm going to thank Sister Zul and Spectrums Africans for being here. I'm going to thank the Africana Studies Kwanzaa poets, and I'm certainly going to thank my colleague, my brother, and my classmate, Dr. Ronald Stevens, for being here with us, although via the internet and Zoom, being with us and giving us some words of wisdom. So in conclusion, we're going to raise the cup, the Kikombe Chao Moja, and we're going to say Harambe, which means unity, 7 times. Harambe. 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 Harambe, 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 Harambe. Thank you so much for joining us. Although this was an abbreviated ceremony, we normally spend 3 hours or more. We are thankful that you're here. We're thankful to President Repollet for allowing us to have this ceremony today. And it's mostly been, believe it or not, it's mostly been ad-lib for a huge portion of the ceremony. And so forgive us for the technical problems, but thank you for being here. Madasi and Habari Gani.